Good morning and welcome to Hope, Faith, and Joy Daily Devotion with me, Pastor Amanda. Yes, I am extra early today, but I've got a long day ahead of me, but I can still make time for a daily devotion, which I think is important for all of us to remember, even in the midst of the chaos. Even on a Monday morning, we can always take just a few minutes to set aside to dive into our Bible and learn a little something from God today. So thanks for joining me. So today, of all days, is one of our more difficult scriptures that we encounter, especially in the life of Abraham. And what we discover in today's scripture is that Abraham is asked to sacrifice his son Isaac. And we focus on a lot on Abraham's actions in all of this. And there's a lot of different people wonder, how could anybody ever consider sacrificing their son? And what we also realize as Christians is this is the level of love that God has for us, that in order to save many lives, he gave his own son for us. And Abraham is kind of setting up that same motif, because if you think about it fully, that Abraham was promised to have many, many generations. And so in order to have all of this life brought to earth, he was going to have to sacrifice his son, according to his conversation with God. But he's really just becoming the model for which we will understand Christ, especially in this Christmas season, that he came into this world so that he could give his life so that all of us could experience life. And so really that's what we're seeing here, is the build up to really how God's mercy plays out. Because what we also see is that God goes, we just needed to know that you were faithful. I needed to know that you trusted me, and you proved it, but let's not kill your son. Let's not do it. And so we have this beautiful moment where then the ram shows up and Abraham does not sacrifice his son. But I like to point out some little things that I think are interesting that sometimes we read over too fast, because we're like, oh my goodness, he's sacrificing his son. We just get so focused on that. But what we find too is, like, Abraham had to go with his young men before he took Isaac. But he says this in verse 5, "Stay here with the donkey. The boy and I will go over there. We will worship. Then we will come back to you." Abraham already has a trust that God's going to take care of them. You know, we can say all we want, but he's already saying we will be back. And then he does say God will provide the lamb. He's very much he's not lying to his son. And there's a sense in here we don't pay enough attention to Isaac's role in this. Think about Isaac's trust of his father in all of this. He's this kind of silent partner, but he's not just, a tiny baby that can be jostled around. Here is a young teenage boy, most likely, who can carry wood, who can have an intelligent conversation with his dad. And then he's going to allow his very old dad to just bind him up and put him on the altar. There is a level of trust we are seeing also in Isaac. And that is to be commended. Do we have that same level of trust, that we know that there's certain steps we have to take in our faith journey? And sometimes I don't know that it's about proving it to God that we're faithful. It's about proving to ourselves that we're faithful. But how often are we like, I don't have to do that because, in my heart I know I'm faithful, but I don't have to show the actions to be faithful? And here Abraham says, no, you have to show the actions also of your faithfulness and your trust. And when you do that, the results are awesome. You gain your son back, and life is there. And so, yes, it's a very disturbing chapter, but we see a lot about the importance of trust and faithfulness, and a challenge to us. Do we trust God with our whole lives that what we love most, we'd be willing to sacrifice in more than words? In more than words. Because I've seen people who've made some sacrifices in their lives, and then what they find on the other side is something better and greater than they could have ever imagined. But the only way they could get there is if they actually put their faith and trust into action. And that gives us hope of what God can do beyond our imaginations. And so I hope that's helpful for today. But I also want to, this chapter ends with another little bit of a genealogy to kind of break in the next character who's going to be important to our story. And so we find that Abraham's brother is having children, and one of the children happens to be Rebecca, and we'll see her show up again here in just a little bit. And so that is what we have today. Thanks for letting me be super early today. Have a funeral today to celebrate the life of a very important person in my life. And so, but I still wanted to make sure I took time with you all as we encounter Abraham and his journey and how it's a reflection in our own lives. So thanks for joining me this morning with Hope, Faith, and Joy Daily Devotion. We'll see you tomorrow.